Hello everyone, I hope you are keeping safe and well. My name is Sinead McCrohan and you are very welcome to our second episode of Discover Your Future at DCU, and this episode is going to be focused on physics. So if you are a student at the minute in school, maybe you're in TY, 5th year, even 6th year, and you have an interest in physics, then I hope today can be a very useful webinar for you. Just before we get started, I will draw your attention to the Q&A function that is at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So throughout the conversation today, if you want to ask us any questions at all, whether it's about physics modules in DCU, about the student experience, what kind of jobs you can get, anything that comes up that you have a further question about, please do let us know through the Q&A function, and we will be able to let our panel know that you guys are asking. So I will stop talking and I will start introducing the panel onto the call. So the purpose of these webinars are to give you, I suppose, a real varied insight into the offerings that we have in DCU. So we're trying to give you a perspective from a student, a graduate, someone who lectures in DCU, or even someone who has worked out in industry. So we have a fantastic panel today that I will start to introduce to you now. So as I introduce the panel, they can turn their videos on and get comfortable. So up first, we have a current student in DCU, Mary Walsh, who is studying science education and is also one of our fantastic senior student ambassador. So Mary, I'm going to promote you to a panelist there. Hopefully it works. Next up, we have a two-time graduate of DCU, Brendan Owens. So Brendan studied his undergrad in DCU studying physics with astronomy, and he also did the master's in science communication. So I'm going to promote Brendan to a panelist now. This should work. Next up, we have Dr. David Robert Grimes, who is a researcher at DCU, and I'm sure we will hear a lot more about his research over the next couple of minutes. He focuses on cancer physics, on medical imaging, and lots more. So you're very welcome, David. And last but certainly not least, I'm going to welcome Dr. Jennifer Cochran to the call, who is the head of physics with biomedical sciences in DCU and is also a professor, and I believe also did her undergrad in DCU as well. So Jennifer, you are very welcome onto the call. This has worked fantastically. I'm delighted. I never trust tech, especially on a live webinar. So this is fantastic that we can see everyone. How are you all keeping?
Great, thank you very much for having us.
No problem at all. Everyone, can you unmute your mics? Is that working for you guys?
Yep, all working.
Yep,
Great.
seems to be.
Just to check before and no one goes off on a tangent and then we can't hear them at all. But thank you very, very much to our panel for taking the time out of their day to speak to all of these prospective students who are online today to learn more about physics at DCU. So for anyone who's just entered the call, this is our wonderful panel, and you can ask the panel anything you'd like, well, to a certain extent, through our Q&A function that you can see at the bottom of the screen. So maybe we will start with Jennifer first, just as a bit of an overview to see what sort of physics courses we have in DCU for those students who are interested.
Thanks very much, Sinead. So to tell you about our physics courses, I suppose I should say that we have a common entry into physics. So in first year, we've decided that you shouldn't have to make any more big decisions. You've already decided you'd like to come and study physics, so we won't make you decide much more than that. So we have a general entry into physics now where you'll learn basic concepts in physics and really get the fundamentals down in the first year. And then at the end of first year, you choose a pathway into one of our four other courses now. We have a brand new course starting this year. So those are applied physics, physics with biomedical sciences, or physics with astronomy. And our new course then is physics with data analytics. So with the physics with, or the applied physics, you're really looking at sort of the fundamental physics and how it applies to the real world. So if you have an interest in sort of ending up working in Intel, for example, or going down that sort of route, the really applied aspects of physics, applied physics is for you. With the physics of biomedical sciences, it's really where physics and biology overlap and link. So you'll learn things about like the physics of the human body, you learn about biomechanics, you learn about medical diagnostics and medical physics, and where physicists play a big role in diagnosing of diseases. For the physics with astronomy, it's kind of in the title, I suppose. You're going to do physics, but you're also going to learn about astronomy. So you're going to learn about space science, rocket science. You can actually tell someone that you are studying rocket science, which is wonderfully fun to be able to say. And you also will have the opportunity to visit either a telescope or an observation place, depending on what's going on in that year. And then our new course, which is starting just this year, the Physics with Data Analytics, is really looking at where the future of technology is going, which is in this idea that we're getting huge quantities of data from numerous different sources, and being able to understand and analyze and draw conclusions from that data is really, really important, and is going to be extremely important for most careers going forward if you're going to be working in the science and tech industry. So I guess that's a bit of an overview of the 4 courses.
Yeah, fantastic. So lots on offer there for a student who is interested in physics. So as far as I'm aware, Jennifer, you don't actually have to have studied physics for the Leaving Cert in order to do physics at DCU. So that first year in kind of the general entry, what sort of things would you be learning to get everyone kind of on the same playing field then in order to progress on from year 2?
Yeah, most definitely. You have to have studied a science course, but physics is not a requirement. So first year of physics, and especially in the first half of the first year, is really about getting everybody up to the same speed. So that will be really covering what would have been covered for the most part in the Leaving Cert course, but taking it a little step further. So you'll learn things like mechanics, you'll learn things about optics, electronics, and you'll do a little bit in terms of quantum, but also there'll be a very strong emphasis on the maths. So again, you don't need honors maths to come in, but there will be a lot of maths, and especially within the first year, in order, again, to get everybody up to speed. So you'll be doing sort of what would have been the Leaving Cert maths course almost again within first year too. And from then we build on the fundamentals once we go into second year and onwards.
That's great to know, because there could be 6-year students today who are sitting there thinking, I would love to go into physics, but I'm not doing it at the minute. You know, is there any way?
Yeah, and there are some schools that don't necessarily offer physics as an option as well. So by all means, no, if you have an interest in physics and you like maths, that's really all that's required to get you started in our physics degrees.
Exactly. And then once you're in and you complete that general first year, you can kind of start to navigate then and carve your own path. And Jennifer, in terms of learning, because I know you're a professor in the School of Physics at the minute, I'd imagine it's not just sitting in a lecture and listening. Now, granted, maybe there might be a bit of a caveat over this year with COVID-19, but in general, I'd imagine there's practical work that you can do. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and maybe even the facilities that we have on campus for our physics students?
Most definitely. So yes, physics is an active subject. You're not just sitting there, listening to someone drone on at you for hours and hours. We have a huge component of laboratory work as part of our physics degrees in all years of our physics degrees. So we have a newly renovated first year physics teaching lab, which has the cutting edge technology with new equipment and the ability for students to really get their hands in. As you say, this year has been a bit of a strange one, and luckily we were able to, within the first semester, have our first year students in doing their labs. So at least they got some exposure, and hopefully going forward, there'll be more of that. In first and then in second year, it starts to specialize a little bit more. You're still doing lots of general physics where you're doing spectroscopy and optics, but you're also doing electronics. We have electronics projects in our second year where you get to do some programming with things like Arduino boards and starting to learn about how those two things interface. And then we start to do some slightly more specific ones. So say for the biomed, we do Doppler analysis and how an ultrasound works, and you get to use equipment that might be relevant to you going forward. In third year, then we get even more specialized and you get to more specifics, experiments that are related to your topic. And then in the final year, you get to do a final year project, which can either be computational or lab-based. And that really is brand new research. So it could be the first time someone is ever doing anything. So you could be discovering the next thing that nobody knew was coming. So that's really at the point when you really get to take what you've learned, bring it into the lab and see what you can do with it.
Exactly. And then a lot of resources, as you mentioned, on campus to make that happen, between the labs and the tech that you use. For someone, we might pass this over to Mary now, for someone who's actually had experience in the last year, 2 or 3 using that equipment. So we've mentioned that we kind of have the specific physics related courses. So we've applied physics, physics with biomedical sciences, physics with astronomy, and the new physics with data analytics. But there are other courses in DCU that do incorporate the subject of physics into it as well. So Mary, you're studying science education at the minute in DCU. So tell me how much physics is involved there and what the course is about.
Yeah, I do, a significant amount of the physics modules. I wouldn't do all of them, and I certainly don't get to do as much lab work as some of the other students get to do, but that's because I have to split my time a little bit with maths and also the teaching stuff as well. So in terms of the physics stuff, I still got to do practicals all this year. And all of my semester one practicals went ahead. Even last semester, we were supposed to have a research project that we were supposed to do in the labs using Arduinos and doing that bit of programming and different sensors and stuff. And we got that shipped out to us then at home. And when we still got to have those labs go ahead at home. And you know, it was a bit different. It was a bit strange, but it was good. And I think I got to learn a bit from it as well from home.
Yeah, and we adapt, and you were still able to do your work from home. So science education will qualify you to teach science in a secondary school. So can you tell us a little bit about that, and maybe even the difference between, like, okay, you're learning your physics subjects, but you also have to learn how to teach physics, which I imagine is a battle in itself, you know, if it's a difficult subject.
Yeah, so you come in and you do a common first year. So you kind of get to do a bit of biology, a bit of physics, a bit of maths, and a bit of chemistry. And then in the end of your second year, then you get to choose which subjects you want to teach to Leaving Cert out of physics, chemistry, and maths. So I chose physics and maths, but people choose any two basically. And then you go forward with them. You get to do lab work in chemistry and physics, even if you don't get to choose that one in your second year. You still get to do second year labs in chemistry and maths, and first year labs in chemistry and physics. And then when you're in third year, you only do one set of labs. So I only had to do the physics labs, and I got to spend, I think I had extra physics labs or something to make up for the time. But yeah, you get to do then a lot of the kind of more the modules that the applied physics and physics with biomed and physics with astronomy, and now our data analytics of physics get to do. So you get to do the quantum mechanics, the electromagnetism, I'm trying to think the ones that are off the top of my head, introduction to classical mechanics, these different type of modules that they're getting to do. But you also get to do like teaching and assessing leaving cycle physics, and you get to do electronics for physics teachers, and micro teaching and different things. And you have practical labs where you learn how to teach physics specifically, and breaking it down to like a Leaving Cert level, and just how to get the point across to Leaving Cert students. So it's really good.
And so we mentioned earlier, like the facilities that we have, and obviously everything is like state of the art and like you would get in industry, but there are also other, I suppose, supports available there as well. Mary might as well be an ambassador for the Maths Learning Centre. She absolutely loves the place. Have you been able to go like to the Maths Learning Centre, or even mention kind of some other supports there for students who might maybe haven't done physics in sixth year, or maybe struggling a little bit when they come into first year?
Yeah, so this year I got to use a support that I didn't really use much up to now. It was the Writing Centre. So I did a semiconductors module where we had to do a research paper, and I'd never really done one before. So I got to, you know, check with the Writing Centre, submit it, and see if that was kind of what they were looking for.
Yeah.
And then kind of get that feedback from it before I got a grade on it. So it was really helpful. It's like kind of getting it proofread or checked by someone of like an academic standard before you actually get marked down on, you know, not knowing how to do stuff properly. And as well, like during normal times, you'll find me and a bunch of my friends just sitting in the Maths Learning Centre. It's like a special little centre where you can drop in and just sit down and like do maths or physics, or sometimes we do chemistry in there as well. And there's tutors and PhD students and master students and, you know, qualified lecturers or whoever they are. I don't know who they are, but they just give you free grinds basically in maths and just help you out as much as they can. And they're super adaptable as well. They're really nice, and they kind of have a good grasp of maths, and most of them have a really good, you know, physics background as well. A lot of them are physics background too, so it's really helpful.
Yeah, I know a lot of students listening today will take comfort in that, you know, even when you get into a course, you know, you're not just kind of left to your own devices. You can absolutely seek support there if it's needed. So not only, Mary, are you doing a kind of science teaching degree, but you do also have an opportunity in that course to go out and do some industry work placement, don't you?
Yeah, so I got to do an industry placement last semester in SSE Electricity. I was in their offshore wind development department, and this semester I'm applying to do, or this summer I'm applying to do another internship with the STEM teacher internship program, and they'll kind of place me with hopefully a physics-ish or maths-ish based internship that I'll get to do. But all of the other physics students, I believe, get to do a work placement, and I know a lot of them really, enjoy it, and they get to use a lot of skills from it. It also gives them like a little extra like edge when they're going out into the employment market. You don't have to be as worried looking for jobs. Some of them get hired back, and they get really good references, and they learn a lot and get really good skills from working from different companies. I can't even think a lot of them, like friends I had working in different companies, I can't even think, but I think I knew someone in Allianz, Deloitte, I can't really remember anymore, but they were working in big companies doing important things.
I think that's definitely one of DCU's kind of unique selling points, is the industry partnerships that we have and the opportunity to actually get work experience before you leave the university, which not only helps with your own learning, but I'm sure in terms of securing, research or employment or anything like that, it's really great to have something different, to differentiate yourself from every other physics graduate. So someone who knows a lot about studying in DCU, but also about working out in the world, will be Brendan Owens. Brendan, I'll pass the floor, the virtual floor, over to you. As I said, two-time DCU graduate, couldn't get enough of the place. Could you tell us a little bit about your DCU journey and kind of where your physics course has ended up taking you?
Sure, Sinead, thanks so much. I have to kind of go back through the mists of time to think about where I started with things. I guess it's worth mentioning as well that I'm a DCU Access student as well. So I had support from the Access service to be able to get into third level education in the first place, which was amazing. And I started with physics with astronomy. So it's a very interesting experience when you're in this because you'll have the other physics students, the undergrads. You're in it together at the start. So it's very much an evolution of your experience. For me, I was definitely always hooked to astronomy and space science technology. So I was always hungry for more, but you quickly realize you do need that sort of like solid foundation in the mathematical principles and the physics. So you kind of get the tools of the trade as you go through the first couple of years, but then more and more opportunities pop up as you go along with different subjects. Been able to get a taste of things like the quantum mechanics that Mary mentioned, and dark matter and dark energy. How come galaxies are spiral shaped? How did they get that way? What's the physics principles that are behind that? And also got a chance to go to Italy to an observatory in Bologna, which was an amazing experience as part of our placement. So that was actually going out there to use a research telescope to see actually how it worked as well, in terms of having a technician who controls the telescope. We gathered the data, you analyze the data, and it was sort of peering into the heart of a star and working out the ingredients in that star on a laptop, hundreds of light years away from that star. It's just incredible. So you're doing sort of like star detective work, which was absolutely amazing. And that was using, when we got back into DCU from our trip, been able to hop into the computer lab at the time, and just been able to code and program and calibrate the data and find out more. So that was amazing. And then towards the end of the degree, I specialized in solar physics in particular. So studying how this huge ball of super hot gas that we rely on to survive on Earth, how it ticks and kind of how it changes and broils on the surface, and using a mixture of observations from a space telescope and some computer coding to look at magnetic fields. So taking all those sort of like building block tools of understanding electromagnetism and physics principles and applying to something on a star on our doorstep and understanding it there. So that was really interesting to do. I still have, as well, as worth mentioning, some really long lasting friendships. People who've come to my wedding from that sort of thing, from physics with astronomy days, which is really, really nice. So that's something I hold very dear in my memory. And then after the physics with astronomy degree, I basically went straight into science communication masters, which was just for 1 year. And I think it's an interesting thing, and it might seem for students here maybe a wee while away, but it's nice to know that you could add on something like an additional year to add a different flavor to your skill set. So I found it opened up an avenue into things like journalism, publication design, even some very abstract things, or they might appear abstract at first, like philosophical perspectives on science, questioning things like what is a fact, how do you communicate those things, how do you interact with other cultures, when it comes to the scientific method. Lots of really amazing stuff, mind-blowing things. So I basically then put the two things together, put the science communication and the physics with astronomy, and packed my bags and headed off to London and spent about a decade in the Royal Observatory Greenwich, where the famous Greenwich Mean Time was born, and worked there and ended up heading up the public program on astronomy there for activities. And then just before we entered pandemic land, I came back to Ireland. I'm now working with Science Gallery at Trinity College Dublin. So that's where I've ended up. So that's a really condensed version of the past 15 years.
That is a fantastic journey. I'm not going to lie, half the things you mentioned go completely over my head in terms of stars and universe, but fascinating stuff and incredible. And I really like as well, that you were kind of mentioning the communication side of things as well, because it's all well and good if scientists are discovering these incredible things. If the public don't know about it, you want to be able to communicate that in an accessible manner. And I'm sure that's the kind of thing you were covering in your science communication course. That's really, really interesting. And when you entered DCU, Brendan, did you think that this could be a path that you could go on, or did you have any idea in terms of careers what you would like to end up doing?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I know I had a shift probably halfway through the degree where I'd gone from a mindset of, I'm going to follow a path where I'm going to go from degree to, say, master's PhD, but strictly in astrophysics, to then going, I really like the idea about communicating science more so than maybe getting into the research aspect. So I'd like to know more about that. So I had a shift. So that wasn't an original plan that was in there. Really, if I rewind the clock back, I had a really great physics teacher in secondary school, really inspired me, Jimmy Brophy, and still in touch to this day. And, he was really inspirational in saying, trying to, get you to really embrace the physics topic and explore all the avenues and things. So I just knew I was fascinated with the general area, but it's great because you open up doors as you go along through the years, whether it's even, joining a club or society, or just seeing something and chatting to other people, that you maybe shift your plans. So you don't have to worry about having everything really laid out like some sort of blueprint. I found the opportunities came with the journey, and then that's how things change. So yeah, definitely I found that shift into science communication.
Yeah, it's just great to hear for students who are thinking, I'm not sure what I want to do. I kind of like physics, and there is this pressure on students to be very career oriented, and I'm not sure that's exactly the way to go, because as you mentioned, your path can change completely once you get into college. Or you could come to DCU, like a student who's listening today, and do physics general entry and think you're going to go into physics with astronomy, and actually you could go into a different one, depending, physics with data analytics, depending on your interest. So it's really nice to hear that, listen, if you don't have it all sorted upon entry, that is okay. And realistically, no one does, because it's going to change so frequently as well. Just in terms of careers, Brendan, because again, a lot of students are kind of thinking, okay, what job can I get from this? Would you be able to tell us about maybe some classmates of yours and kind of the different areas that they went into, just to give people a taste of kind of what potential careers they could get from doing physics with astronomy in DCU?
Yeah, so actually one of my dearest friends, she actually took a total pivot and went into neuroscience instead. Brona, she's gone into that. She's now postdoctoral research in the UK. But others have gone into teaching. Seamus, a friend of mine, he works in Intel. So you go across finance, technology in terms of computing and that sort of industry, taking, as I say, a subject change as well, which might seem like a radical shift, but and maybe David could actually probably speak more to this. But you can take from where you've been and add it together with something, a new perspective. So yeah, across the board, it's quite varied. I'm trying to think, the great thing is, I guess, in general, is that I wouldn't say, here's the class group and they all went down this avenue. Yeah. Everybody sort of went off in different directions. Yeah, but across the board, from subject change to industry to teaching, that's probably a little example.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Brendan. So for those who do want to go into research, we will pass over to Dr. David Robert Grimes, who has been patiently awaiting his turn to give his 2 cents on physics. David, thank you for taking the time, as for all of our panelists, researching physics. How did you end up there? What is it all about?
That's a really good question. I still have no idea what I'm doing. People just keep employing me, which is great. So one of the things I'm realizing the audience to this, a lot of the people watching this will probably be around 18. And I'm now on my 18th anniversary of being 18. And I still don't know what I'm doing. And that is one of the most fantastic things about physics that I will start with. It is a passport to do far more than you ever thought you could do. So I'll try to illustrate that with maybe some examples of people I started off doing physics DCU with and where they are now, but also my own career path. I am a cancer researcher primarily, but I also look at meta research. So I do research on how we can do research better, which sounds really navel gazing, but is kind of important. I'm also an author, and I do a lot of science broadcasting and things like that as well. So the science communication aspect, I write for different publications, Financial Times, Irish Times, Guardian, people like that. And none of that was planned. And I still don't know what I'm doing. And people always joke about that stuff, but it is true. So physics, because it just essentially teaches you to organize your thinking in a different way. It's a very first principles ground up way of looking at things. And that opens a surprising amount of doors for people. So for one of my best friends who I started doing the first year of physics with astronomy when DCU, back in the days years ago, we only had 2 physics degrees. He's now an inveterate gambler and gets paid an awful lot of money because he does sports statistics for all the big betting companies. So when I need a loan, he's who I go to. And there's a lot of the guys and girls I did physics with went into, a lot of them went into research. Some of them went into medicine as well. And I'll go about my own journey on the periphery of that. Other people have gone on into the financial sector, and it doesn't really make sense if you look at it from that kind of, I'm doing a physics degree to get a job perspective. Physics opens a lot of doors for you. And I think if you're not sure what you're doing, which is, I'm certainly at 18, I had no idea. And I'm sure a lot of people here are going, what am I doing with the rest of my life? If you really want to hedge your bets and learn something really interesting at the same time, I think physics is a fantastic choice. For example, I started doing physics at DCU. I originally thought I was going to be a journalist. And then I was told by a science teacher in my old school, unlike Brendan, my physics teacher was hilariously awful. He was great crack. We loved him, but he was terrible at his job. God bless him. He's retired now. We can't see him anymore. And we enjoyed it, though, just as the kind of the as much as you could at the Leaving Cert level. But when I went to the open day at DCU and I met some of the lecturers there, some of whom are still there, some of whom I call friends now, one of the things that really struck me was how committed they were to, and like a lot of when you go to a lot of open days and you ask a question to someone, they often fob you off. There's one particular professor at DCU now who's still there, and I remember asking him a question trying to catch him out, and he turned around and said, I don't know the answer to that. And this is the days before Wikipedia. That's how old I am. And he disappeared off to his office, and I thought, got rid of him. He came back 5 minutes later with a textbook and said, I actually worked that. It's really interesting. And I remember being struck by the fact that this random snotty 17-year-old had asked him a question to catch him out, and he'd have gone and got the answer and was really open about how little he knew about this and I thought that was brilliant, because that's one thing you do learn in physics. We're all kind of building from the ground up. And that kind of intellectual humility, indeed philosophy of science stuff that Brendan alluded to as well, is something you learn in physics, I think, more so than other degrees in science. Now, I've gone very deeply interdisciplinary. I work in cancer research these days, and people often look at me and go, what are you? You're a physicist by training. And I mainly do biology things these days. And that's because the basic principles, the precepts that you learn, the mechanisms you use to analyze the world are fundamental and equally applicable to other areas. Yeah, you have to go and do a lot of homework, but I find it a real pleasure and a challenge to have to work with people in different fields who've done an entirely different background to me and solve problems that literally can make a huge difference in people's lives. And again, I won't harp on too long, but I will just say that as a passport to doing a lot of things, physics is a pretty good bet. And also DCU is a fantastic place to do it. Brendan also alluded to the clubs and socks aspect and the social aspect of DCU. I spent more time in the clubs and socks office than I ever did in the lecture halls as an undergrad, and I did my PhD in DCU as well. But it's a fantastic social atmosphere as well as an intellectual one experience, and check all of that out.
Amazing. I mean, I'm just going to go and do my CAO again and put physics down on it after that description. I mean, I just think that's so true. I mean, anyone that I've met who's studied physics, like, you can just really go anywhere with it. Once you have that, I suppose, thirst for knowledge, and you're going to be dedicated to your studies, then I think you could really, really go anywhere with it. And if you want to talk about maybe some of your research, David, if you don't mind, just to learn more about it, because again, some students will have an interest in kind of, okay, well, what sort of things can I research? Like, what would that involve? What's the job of a researcher? How would you kind of sum that up?
Sure. Well, I'll give you two extremes. I have a lot of different interests. I'm not sure if it's a compliment or an insult, but one of the professors in DCU calls me intellectually promiscuous, which I think means I don't pay much attention to anything I'm doing. It's just like poking around. He called me that as an undergrad, so at least we're keeping consistent. But one of my major area of research is on tumors and how they grow. And essentially tumors, like all human tissue, use oxygen. But it turns out that if you have different concentrations of oxygen, that has a really big impact on how your tumor responds to radiation, so how treatment works for you, and also the end fate of your tumor, whether it's going to be metastatic and very dangerous or whether it's not going to grow at all. And it turns out to analyze that, to really understand that, you need to know something about, right on the granular level, how does oxygen travel? Where does it go? And you need the tools of physics and mathematical physics to answer that question. So you start off with something that seems like it's a toy problem that really has huge clinical application. The other part of my research, I do a lot of in the public understanding of science. I also look at why people believe conspiracy theories and why conspiracy theories tend to fail. So why these models aren't viable. And that's a weird thing. You think, where does physics come into that? Well, the actual mathematical modeling that you need to do, I learned in physics. I learned that from a totally different area of physics, but the framework that you learn is actually applicable to something else. And I think one of the biggest, insights that physicists have is that you learn tools for one job, and you suddenly realize that physicists look at their tools and this tool works for the other job too, with a little bit of creative rearrangement. So definitely, there's an awful lot of doors that can open if you have the physics tool bag. And if you want to keep your future open and look at a lot of options, again, I still don't know what I'm doing. And people always think I'm joking. I'm really not.
Yeah, I'm like, does anyone ever know what they're doing? Like, do you ever have it figured out in terms of career or interest? It's evolving all the time. But I love to hear that kind of, transferable skills, transferable knowledge that you can use in various different areas. So I'll open the floor to questions now. And of course, you can pop in any questions for our listeners if you heard something of interest, if you want to clarify something about our courses in DCU. And I might open a question up to the panel in general. If you could advise, say, a 6-year student, or maybe you could go back to your 6-year self, is there any advice that you would give someone who is considering physics? And maybe that's in terms of subjects you've studied, maybe websites or areas you could look into to gain some more knowledge. If you could think of maybe one tip each that you could give a student listening today, just while they prepare any questions, if there are any.
I can jump in there. I guess the main thing I think for any student looking at the CAO at the moment is to do what you love. And this idea of putting the highest points, and it's just do what you love, what you're interested in. As David said, when I started physics, I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up, and still probably don't. But the idea being that I knew I loved physics. So I did physics, and I haven't looked back since. So I think if you have any kind of interest in, as the other guy said, in mathematics or in physics, or just basically how things work or why they work that way and how the world works and the biggest explosions down to the tiniest atoms. If you're interested in any of those things, then physics is there for you. And just to go back to a previous point that Mary made about the supports there, even if it's not that you're coming through the traditional route of having done it for the Leaving Cert, DCU is a very informal place. All the lecturers are on first name basis with all the students. We have small class sizes. So, if you're not sure and you're worried that you won't get the support you need, be assured that we're there, and there's a very much an open door policy of supports there. So I guess it really comes down to what you love to do. And if you think you might love to do physics, then you should come and do it here in DCU.
That's fantastic advice, Jennifer. And as well, considering like the points can fluctuate, you know, especially given, and some people are going to sit the Leaving Cert this year, some people aren't. Try not to be concerned about points. I mean, at the end of the day, it's supply and demand in terms of how many people put on their CAO, how many places we can offer. Really do that kind of in order of preference, as you said, and follow what you love. Anyone else have any good tips?
I think one of the to follow on from what Jennifer said there, I think if I could go back and tell my 18-year-old self something, I know I wouldn't listen because I knew my 18-year-old self, but presuming that I would in this hypothetical model, what I would say is if you're curious about things, physics is a great option. And the only thing that I always say is what we learn in Leaving Cert is interesting because we have to learn a certain amount by rote, we have to learn a certain amount by regurgitation, to put not too fine a point in it, as any of the young audience here studying for the Leaving Cert probably feel. The nice thing about university is, in general, not just physics, is that suddenly you're more rewarded for how you think rather than what you think, and how you get to the answer rather than just, you know, parroting out what's going to get you the marks. And I think that's really liberating. And I think it's something that sometimes can be overwhelming. Some students come in and they're like almost scared by how much freedom they have. But one thing is DCU is a really nice environment for that as well. So I'd say, you know, don't feel like it's a continuation of secondary school. It's something else entirely, and something, quite frankly, that's much better, I think.
Absolutely. I think so many students, you know, not to be cliche, like say cliche, but they find themselves and they come to university, and it's true because you really meet the people who have similar interests, whether that's through a course or through a club in society. And a common thread throughout any of these conversations that we have with, be it a student, a grad, anyone, it's people talk about the vibe in DCU. They say it's a fantastic vibe. There's a fantastic energy around the place. And I think that's true. You know, I say our campus is not too big, it's not too small, it's just right across our 3 campuses. We do have a question that came in there, so I'll open it up to the floor. The question for our listeners is, are there many job opportunities in Ireland for cancer physics and also for physics with astronomy?
Will I jump into that first part anyway? Yeah, there's actually loads. So one thing that I think we have this idea when we're younger that is very stratified. To get to the end point, you have to go through a particular set of steps. And that's not really the case. If you want to work in cancer research, what you need to demonstrate is that you can research, is that you know the basic fundamentals to get there. There's no one path to get there. There's loads of ways. And in Ireland, we have, for example, in DCU, we have the NICB, which is doing loads of cancer research. There is active translational research groups in Trinity, in UCD. Cancer is just such a pervasive problem. There's groups everywhere. And you can go abroad with it too. I mean, I spent many years in Oxford and some years up in Queens and Belfast doing cancer research too. So absolutely there are other places on, there's loads. We're always screaming out for people to do cancer research because it turns out it's a pretty complicated problem and we need all hands on deck from all backgrounds, including physicists and mathematicians.
It's fantastic. Thank you, David. Brendan, do you want to hop in there in terms of physics with astronomy?
Yeah, no problem. I am back in the country like just about a year's anniversary, so I'm still kind of like getting my feel for the sense of things in the country. But one of the things that surprised me, it felt like I fast forwarded in time, is the space industry in general in Ireland is really picking up. So what I would say, if you're interested in the more space science technology side, when I left about 10 years ago, it was talking about building components that would be part of instruments, that would be part of spacecraft. And now I feel like it's getting to the point where it's now Irish companies and Irish graduates who are making the instruments themselves to go on spacecraft. And that's going to be an evolution that continues. So there's an acceleration there, which other people could probably speak to better, which is really interesting. And in the pure astronomy side as well, there is a wonderful facility in County Offaly. People might know in Birr, there's a famous historic telescope called the Leviathan.
Mary from Offaly, that's why we're laughing.
Oh, perfect. There we go. And yeah, there's a part of a radio telescope called ILOFAR that's based there in Birr. So and it doesn't care about clouds, which is great. So it doesn't matter about the weather. So if you're interested in that's research been done in Ireland.
That's great. Thank you so much, Brendan. Another question has come in. Someone says, being in TY, I'm recently learning about all of these things. So it's probably thank you for kind of covering all of them. And they said, if I'm doing a module, can I change modules during my second year? So that's probably in relation to like choices and kind of which strand you can go into. Jennifer, you might be able to hop in here and answer that.
Yeah, most definitely. I would say that it should be noted that all of our courses are physics with. So they're physics with something else. So they are all physics courses, which means that especially within the first 2 years, we don't really distinguish the classes hugely because you're all mostly studying the same thing and you're all integrated together. So especially in second year, most certainly you would be able to swap between one and the other if you felt maybe I wasn't in the right one then. We don't offer a huge variety of different modules to choose from so much in first and second year because our classes are very small and we're trying to get the fundamentals into you. So you do need to, unfortunately, you do need to learn the fundamentals before you can run away and do all of the sort of more advanced topics. So there is choice in third and fourth year, more so in terms of what modules you can choose. And usually the way DCU operates in totally, you have a change of mind options within the first couple of weeks of semester anyway. But again, to note that we've kind of taken away the need to have that choice by coming into first year and studying the modules you do. Now with the bringing in the data analytics side and the data analytics course, that's offering an awful lot more choice to our students as well. So even if you do choose, say, the physics with astronomy, you have the option to take some of the data analytics modules. So we try to open as many doors as possible and let you choose what might be of most interest to you, I guess, going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Like in from experience, that's true. When the PhD degree started, I saw my colleagues in third year doing stellar physics, which seemed far more interesting than semiconductor physics too. And literally, even though I wasn't in that course stream, it was a case of a quick conversation with the module coordinator, and suddenly I was in stellar physics, which is terrible because now I need to learn about semiconductors, but it was great at the time.
That's great. I might ask my own question just off the TY. So if there is someone here, whether they're watching live or they might watch back the recording in TY now, so they'll be choosing their subject soon. I assume you would all maybe recommend doing physics, but are there any other subjects you think that might be beneficial for someone who's interested in doing physics in third level?
I guess I can jump in there and say that we wouldn't sort of say focus on necessarily that you would have to have done all of the science courses. Obviously, if you're particularly interested in doing physics or biomedical sciences, for example, having done biology for the Leaving Cert definitely won't hurt. Mm-hmm. And having done chemistry, for example, for the Leaving Cert won't hurt. Other options, though, I did technical drawing for the Leaving Cert, and I found that very useful because I work in biomedical diagnostics, and a lot of that is designing medical devices as well as part of my research. So a lot of that is graphical design. So I would say a broad sort of variation in subjects that you do at the Leaving Cert can only help when you get to university, because even if it's not the specific thing you're learning, you might be able to take some of the skills going forward. And I suppose just to come back, the idea that studying physics and this conception that physics is hard and I won't be able to do it, and maths is hard and I won't be able to do it, I'd just like to smash that one right out. Physics is a course like any other course, and if you have a genuine interest in it, you learn it step by step, just like you would do with anything else. So coming with any subjects where you've applied yourself is helpful. Yeah.
Also, you get to build a logbook into your exams. Like it's like having a cheat sheet with you in every exam.
I was also going to say as well that this might seem a little odd to say these two things, but first of all, I don't consider myself very good at mathematics inherently, but I love physics too much not to put the work in to try and make it work. So like if I have to put in a bit of extra effort, and I did, and chat with friends and trying to problem solving, say, there'll always be somebody else who's better at that. And you kind of say, look, can you help me out? Can we work through this problem together? That's a whole other thing of, friendship and communication, but it works really well. And the other thing is, I would say, without sacrificing maybe another subject that you might find more relevant to go alongside physics, don't worry about, say, keeping art. For instance, I took art all the way to Leaving Cert, and I really don't regret that at all. In fact, I'm so happy, especially where I've ended up now in terms of thinking creatively and critically about different problems and problem solving. So don't for a moment think, oh no, this means I have to let go of art or something like that. You don't have to.
That's great advice. I mean, study what you enjoy, and you should do well at it. And the general rule of thumb for any, especially a course in DCU, like if it's not a requirement, you're not expected to know anything about it upon entry. So they're not going to surprise attack you if you come in and you haven't done physics and expect you to, do all these problems. You learn with everyone else upon entry. So I'll just open the questions up for one more minute if anyone does have a last minute question that they want to answer. I always like to finish off on a kind of more, say, social note in terms of college experience in DCU, because as I said, it's always about that energy and about that vibe. Does anyone want to come in with their absolute favorite memory from DCU? Doesn't necessarily have to be physics related, just from your own experience. That's suitable for 6 years.
That's the problem.
I'll say, well, I was in, when I was studying physics, I joined the squash club and became one of the committee members in the squash club. And my fondest memory of that is playing that bubble football thing with the rest of the squash club together, where you run into each other and fall back. Yeah. I mean, I didn't know which way was up, but it was brilliant fun. The clubs and societies in DCU are phenomenally good. There is a club for everything. And if there isn't, you should make it, because the supports are there to do that. So yeah, most definitely the friends you're going to make from not just physics, but all over the university are brilliant. Mm-hmm.
That's so true.
There was also for years a Murder, She Wrote society in DCU. And one time the actress who plays Jessica Fletcher, Angela Lansbury, rang the Clubs and Socks office because she'd been invited to give a talk in DCU, and Muggins here answered the phone and kept wondering, she sounds like the teapot in Beauty and the Beast. And it wasn't until I took the name down that, so weird things can happen in Clubs and Socks time. But yeah, I spent a lot of time on drama committee. We went to New York with trips, and it was all subsidized massively because we're really good at making things cheap because we're students. So you'll have life-changing experiences both in the intellectual sphere and the social sphere. So, just go for it. It's good fun.
I love that.
I'd definitely say the same thing. It's absolutely brilliant. The memories you keep is fantastic. I loved it was the sub-aqua club is what I'd loved been involved in as well. So doing scuba diving, because it felt like a great hobby to kind of put alongside physics, because you're like, I'm enjoying this active thing and I'm enjoying the scenery underwater. I can also think about the physics in action as well. So it seemed like the perfect unison. And that was great, just going all around the country to some of the most scenic locations and going diving. Fantastic.
I love that. Mary, do you have anything to add before we finish up? Any memorable experiences from your time in DCU? I know a few of them.
Yeah, I've just been on campus like the last few years. Like, it's been so good, and it's really nice to have like so many friends so close that they're always coming by to distract me for a cup of coffee or whatever it is. In normal times, everyone comes by to use my microwave and have a meal and a chat and like study sessions in the kitchen. And honestly, some of my favorite memories are in the library, studying with friends and working on problems, and like trying to do anything except the work we had to do in front of us, and also working through the work as well, like those late nights. There's some of my favorite memories, I think.
So true, when you're delirious and nothing's going in and everything is hilarious. I love that time in the library. Colette O'Byrne said, brilliant talk. So that's our stamp of approval from everyone. But there's just one question before we finish up, and we'll end it after that. Someone just asked, would computer science be a beneficial subject to study for Leaving Cert if you want to go into physics?
Definitely.
100%.
Oh yeah, most certainly. Whether you're going into any of the sort of the topics we discussed this evening, computer science and data analytics, and it's where the future is going. So no matter what, most certainly really beneficial.
That's great, thank you. For anyone who does have questions maybe that come into your head an hour later when this is over, the email that you got the link from today, which is studenthelp@dcu.ie, is our general inbox for any queries in relation to studying at DCU. So whether it's this evening, in a week's time, in a month's time, and you have a question that you want to ask, please do let us know. If you have a question for one of our panelists in particular, I can be sure to pass on the query, and if they had the time to answer it, they might be able to do that as well. But that is everything from us this evening. We will be back next week to do an episode on maths. So if you are interested in physics and maybe maths as well, you might want to join us back with another panel next week to talk about the kind of maths related degrees in DCU. But thank you very much to everyone for attending. A particular thank you to our panelists for again taking the time out of their schedule to speak with us. I'd say you've converted a few people now to physics, myself included, but thank you very much for that. I hope everyone stays safe and has a lovely evening, and I'll see you all soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sinead.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks a million, Sinead.
Bye.